For 37 million Americans, this is life, living below the poverty line. Find out what you can do. Please, don't let one more fall. Go to povertyusa.org and get involved.
Lord, make me a means of your peace.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Blue Rothfuss, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Lafayette, Louisiana, and this is Catholics Today. Today we're very excited to welcome two special guests. They are members of the St. Landry Cemetery Tours, and they are Yvonne Norman and Donna Burgoyne. Thanks ladies for being with us. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
This is a fascinating project that both of you are involved in, and we want to let everybody know about it, and it's also a wonderful lesson in living history. Can you tell us, Yvonne, get us started about how did the St. Landry Cemetery Tours come about, and how long have you guys been at this?
Well, we began in 2003 when the city of Opelousas came to one of our parish council meetings, and Father Tremmy was the pastor at the time, and he listened to the presentation, and then he looked at me and he says, "Can we do this?" I said, "Sure, we can do it." And he says, "Well, go for it." So we began not knowing what a cemetery tour should be, but with planning, we came out with, that time we'd do 12 spirits, and we'd keep people in the cemetery for 3 hours. Well, that was way too long. So now we've edited it, and we've edited the tours over the years, and now the tours are about an hour and a half each tour, and you experience 8 spirits telling you their story. Plus you got the ambiance of being in the cemetery and experiencing a cemetery that started in 1798 and still being developed, and people are still being buried and tombs are still being built in our cemetery. So it's really a work of art, and it's God's creation manifesting itself. And so we have the opportunity to research the history of people in the past that are buried there and bring them to life so people can understand where their culture came from and why things are the way they are in Southwest Louisiana today.
Wow. Truly a living history lesson.
It's a living document, I promise you.
Most definitely. And St. Landry is such a fascinating parish to begin with, one of the oldest churches in our diocese as well, so it's a great place to have these take place. Now, Donna, tell us, what do the cemetery tours benefit with the proceeds from the donations that people give to go on the cemetery tours?
Well, the proceeds go to the restructuring the old grave sites that needs repairs, and we've done other projects within the cemetery. I'm not sure quite everything.
One of the other things we've done besides, we've restored at least 30 plus grave sites.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then we did a couple other enrichments. When you walk out to most cemeteries, you just see a lot of white tombs. And you're like, okay, where do I go? So we can tell you, if you go to the office and they say, well, your person that you're looking for is buried in plot 8, the number 8. Well, what we did was we put numbers throughout the cemetery, so there's 20 different plots, sections of the cemetery. So now when you walk out, there are sections. And so if you know what the section number is, you can get closer to finding your loved one. That was one improvement. Another improvement we've done is there was never a historical marker for our cemetery. So we applied to the state, and now we have a historical marker, one of those bronze ones, and it's there for people to get more information about the cemetery, as well as on one side it recognizes 12 of the people that have made it a noted impact on our community. And we have also done within the cemetery tours. Not saying that's all of them, but that's a starting place.
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's a lot. It's wonderful to be kind of putting the money back into the cemetery.
One of the things we also did was Garrigue de Flaujac, who was in the War of 1812. He's one of the tabletop graves, and his epitaph was written all in French. But through the years, In fact, in 2003, you could read it, but now today, just in the year 2018, you cannot make it out. The grain of the marble or the granite has buffered it. So about 4 years ago, what we did was we created a monument on the side of it, and it has the epitaph in French and in English, so visitors can read it and see what's the importance of this young man that's buried there.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful. Truly a living history lesson. Now, what does a cemetery tour consist of in historical context?
Okay, in historical context, what we're doing is reenacting the people that are buried within the cemetery. Now, I will tell you a little caveat.
Okay.
Almost every year, there is a spirit that flies in because we want to recognize this person that made an influence in our community, but they just don't happen to be buried in St. Landry Catholic Church. So what we do is we tell about their spirit, but they fly in and either visit a relative or a friend that they were associated with in their life that is buried there. And I'm going to give you an example. Last year, we portrayed my uncle, Sidney Sylvester, who was a state representative and a principal at one of the schools. And so he's not buried in St. Landry Catholic Church Cemetery. His mother is, and she's on the front row. So his spirit flew in, and he was visiting his mother and telling his story to his mother, what had happened to him in his life. So we have creative ways of getting our 8 spirits there. Another neat thing about our cemetery tours, and it happens every year and we don't plan on it, is that everyone is doing their research on their spirit. And then all of a sudden we find a connection of dots. I'll give you an example. The first spirit in the tours this year is Frank Beyonce. Frank came to St. Landry Catholic Church with Father Colyard. And he helped Father Colyard because he could speak Creole French, and Father Colyard couldn't. So he came, and so he's the first spirit, and he talks about that. Well, our orphan train rider this year is Marie Duffel, Angela Duffel, and she joined an order of nuns that was an order that Father Colyard got started in St. Landry Catholic Church area, and she joined that particular order. So not knowing that we're going to have 2 tie-ins to Father Colyard, but never knew it until about a week ago. So it happens every year.
That's amazing.
There's a connecting of dots between several of the spirits. One time we had like 4 connections. It was
that gives me chills.
it was
just
neat.
thinking.
It was neat.
It's
But
really
general,
nice.
it is, and how they say the spirits rise off the top of the table. It just happens, and God plans how we're going to do it. So
I'm looking forward to it already,
Okay.
definitely. Now, Donna, tell us how many spirits, once again, will be portrayed in the cemetery tour?
We have 8 spirits this year,
Okay, all right.
different backgrounds, each spirit.
So it's kind of a cross-section of St. Landry history and
Yes.
the people who are buried there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when are the cemetery tours held? Dates and times?
okay. This year, each year they're held the 2nd and 3rd weekend of October.
Okay.
The Saturday evening, October the 13th and October the 20th, is going to be at 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, and 8 o'clock. On the Sunday afternoon, October the 14th and the 21st, is going to be at 2 o'clock as a regular tour in the day, but the 3 o'clock tour is a little bit different. We realized that a lot of our people that came, they were walking with walkers, and they were really being challenged. So what we do there is we create 2 stations where the spirits come to meet them. And we allow the guests to be seated in chairs, or some of them sit in their own little walker, and they hear the presentation, and then we move them to another setting. So therefore, they're able to experience the cemetery tours without the challenge of moving between the grave sites. So we have altogether 7 tours each weekend. Now, if a tour group gets too big, sometimes we split it up and we create more. So we've done up to 19 tours on some years,
That's
because
terrific.
that many people show, and we're glad to have them.
And it's so popular, and I can imagine it's gotten even more popular
Well, we hope-
as the years go by.
And shows like this help us out to get more
Well,
people to know what's going on. So
we're glad to do
Thank
it,
you.
and also we want to let everybody know, if you didn't have a chance to jot down those dates and times, just go to our Diocese of Lafayette Facebook page, and we have the flyer for the cemetery tours and the dates and the times listed, or just give us a call here at the diocese and we'll be glad to share that information with you. Now, how much is the donation for going on the cemetery tour? What kind of money would we need to bring along?
$10.
Oh, great. Well, y'all are the best bargain in town, most definitely, most definitely. And I'm sure that donations beyond that are always welcome
Oh, yes.
as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, who should consider going on a cemetery tour? I told you I'm looking forward to it already. I would think that everybody would be interested in doing it, but who specifically would you recommend?
basically, everyone is invited to create that interest. The people that usually like it are people that are history buffs. They want to learn more about their culture. We've also had a lot of people that are relatives that want to come back and see where somebody's buried, that they haven't been in town a long time. So this is a good time for people to say, why don't you come in? This is an event we can do as a family. A lot of people go eat supper and then come to a tour. They'll go to the tour and then go out for supper later. So it's a good evening event. The only group that is a challenge that would have a hard time focusing is little children.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Anywhere. Some people bring 9 and 10-year-olds and they can handle it and focus for that long, for all through the presentations. But basically, teenagers really enjoy it.
I can imagine.
They enjoy it, and I want people to be aware, it is at night. We do not try and come off as a scary event. We are basically presenting spirits of people, but in reenactment and historically presentations.
Exactly. That sounds great. Now, Donna, tell us a little bit about the character you're portraying.
I'm portraying Coy Marie Pavey, and I taught nursing at T.H. Harris Trade School for 27 years.
Wow. Okay.
And there was over 1,200 students that graduated as licensed practical nurses.
That's amazing. I bet you have some amazing stories to tell, too.
I have a few.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, we're very excited to tell you that Coy, aka Donna, has taped something with us prior to our recording this particular segment, and we'd like to share that with you right now. Here's Donna as Coy Pavey.
Welcome. I am the spirit of Coy Marie Pavey. I was born in 1920 in Opelousas. My father was Paul Pavey, and my mother was Marie Vise. I grew up in Opelousas. My family attended St. Landry Catholic Church, so naturally I went to school at AIC for my education. I graduated in 1936. I was only 16 years old. After graduating from high school, I enrolled at SLI in Lafayette, where I received my degree in education. I taught 1 year in Melville. My father, Paul, he taught in the St. Landry parish schools for many years. They even named a school after him, Paul Pavey Elementary. Later on, they changed the name to South Street Elementary. Well, my sister Ann wasn't too pleased with that, but that's another story. After teaching 1 year in Melville, I decided I wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to teach in a different capacity. So I enrolled at the University of Texas in nursing at the John Seeley Hospital in Galveston, Texas. And this is where I earned my nursing degree. From there, I went on up to Cornell University up in New York, where I specialized in psychiatric nursing. You know, the winters are cold up in New York, and I wanted to move back to Louisiana. So I enrolled at LSU in Baton Rouge, where I received my master's in education. A few months after that, I moved back to Opelousas. A few months after that, I received a phone call from a man by the name of T.H. Harris. Now, T.H. Harris had a vocational school in Opelousas where young men and women graduating from high school could go and learn a skill or a trade. Well, he asked me if I would be interested in teaching nursing over at the trade school. And I listened to what he had to say. Then a few days later, I called him and I accepted the position as director. As director, I implemented, planned, and structured the first practical nursing program in Opelousas. I taught nursing for 27 years there, and over 1,200 students graduated as licensed practical nurses. I retired in 1979. Even though I taught all during those years, I was always involved in the community of Opelousas and St. Landry Parish. One of the clubs I belonged to was called the Inner Club Council, which was started in 1952. And in 1954, they made me president. Well, as council president, I led a group of 22 civic clubs in Opelousas to help me pass a $350,000 bond issue to build a new hospital in Opelousas. 1916, Dr. Daly opened the first sanitarium. Then there was St. Rita's Infirmary, and then St. Landry Clinic had only 22 beds. So Opelousas desperately needed a hospital. On the day of the election, volunteers from the civic clubs in Opelousas, they got together. They started calling people on the telephone, urging people to go out and vote. Vote yes for the bond issue. I even got on the radio, KSLO. I always made sure I was 5 or 10 minutes on before Paul Harvey came on, because I knew everybody listened to Paul Harvey. But that night, after election returns came in, the bond issue had passed 9-1, 931 votes to 112. And in 1957, Opelousas General opened its doors to a brand new 50-bed facility, state of the art. I was so happy for the people of Opelousas finally getting a new hospital. Besides teaching and being involved in the civic activities of Opelousas, I did manage to enjoy life. Some of the things I liked to do was read. I had a library in my home. I loved to play bridge. I started the Duplicate Bridge Club in Opelousas. And I love my football, my Saints and my LSU Tigers. Go Tigers! One of my passions was fishing. I belonged to a boating club in Opelousas. Once a month, some of the members would get together and they'd decide where we were going fishing. We'd go to Holly Beach, or we'd have a caravan going down to Grand Isle. Miss Estelle Perron, my good friend, she used to come with us all the time. We had some good times there. November 12, 1990, I passed away at my family home in Opelousas. I was surrounded by my family. My sister Ann took care of me during my illness. And my sister made the funeral arrangements for me. She died 2 years later after I died. She's buried right here with me. Last November, some of the spirits came to me in the cemetery to tell me that I was chosen 1 out of 8 women to be inducted into the St. Landry Parish Women's Hall of Fame. I said, what? I said, I never heard of that before. So on the night of the induction, some of the spirits from the cemetery and myself, we all went on down to the Delta Club. The place was packed with people. I saw people I knew in real life. Some of these people got old. And then I spotted a table up front, a big round table with some of my family members sitting there. I was so excited to see them. I hadn't seen them in years. I waved at them. I hollered at them. They acted like I didn't even exist. So then my good friend, Miss Estelle Perron, she got up on stage. She said the nicest things about our friendship and what we had done for the parish of Opelousas and St. Landry Parish. Then she presented, in my honor, a plaque to my nephew, Paul. It was such an exciting and glorious evening, and it was such an honor to be there in spirit. I want to thank y'all so much for coming out tonight. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with y'all. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my character. Remember to come out for the cemetery tours the second and third week in October in Opelousas at St. Landry Catholic Church Cemetery. Thank you.
And that's just a little taste about what you'll see when you go on the St. Landry Cemetery tours. You've just been watching Donna Burgoyne as Coy Pavi. And I have to tell you, Donna, it was fascinating to watch. It's just amazing to see how you transform yourself into this whole nother person, or this whole nother spirit, actually. Can you tell us about your dress as a nurse? Your outfit?
Well, this was a typical dress that I wore teaching class, so I had to present myself in a way my students would want to dress and present themselves in front of doctors.
Exactly. And I think you had mentioned earlier, it's not too easy to find a hat like that in around here, because the uniforms of nurses have changed so dramatically.
It was very hard, and the hat I'm wearing is for someone that has a very small head. And I had a lot of pins to pin it up.
Well, you wear it well.
Oh, thank you.
You wear it very well. Now, Yvonne, tell us we've talked a lot about what a cemetery tour is. What is a cemetery tour not exactly?
Well, first of all, it is held during the month of October, but it's not meant to be something dealt with in the Halloween spirit.
I see.
It is, the reason it's in October, to tell you point blank, it has nothing to do with that, the spirits, is because it's one of the driest months of the year. So we pretty reasonably can, because we're out in the open, we got to deal with what God sends us. So most of the times it's a perfect weather, and it's not extremely hot and it's not cool. It's just the perfect temperature in Southwest Louisiana.
Exactly.
So our cemetery tours are basically of avoiding the scary, spooky stuff, but more about how to enjoy your culture, your environment. And it's also a wonderful, holistic way to bring family together to enjoy the past and then enjoy it in the future with their children, so they can see how you respect and you learn from the past and you learn from your relatives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And choosing the most pleasant month of the year is definitely a good idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Donna, can you give us an estimate about exactly how much time, or not exactly, but the approximate time that it would take for one particular group to go through the entire tour? How long do the tours run in general?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Usually each spirit, their speech is usually from 6 to 8 minutes. Sometimes they try to go over, but it doesn't work sometimes. But 6 to 8 minutes per spirit, and it takes time to go to walk through the graves to get to the next spirit.
Well,
So about an hour and a half.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. And like you said earlier, Yvonne, y'all started out at 3 hours, so I can imagine
We had to
90
curve.
minutes is more manageable. Definitely. Now, how have the cemetery tours changed from the ones when you began the tours back in the early 2000s? How have they changed and evolved over the years?
The way they've changed is that we've been paying more attention to our logistics. One of the things is we paid attention more to the pathways. We go from one place to another. We look at what is easiest for the consumer, the person on the tour, in the footpaths. We also look at the other thing that we've changed a little bit is when we talk about the spirits, we also make sure that the spirits realize that the consumer, the person, needs to know more events, the story, not so much dates. And it gets easy to get caught up in dates, but we don't worry about dates as much. It's more about the story and what their memory is from the past. So we've done some of that tweaking. We have a welcome center. When people get there, we welcome them, and they can look at some of the memorabilia there. One of the things this year we changed, and it was a suggestion of one of our spirits, is that we provide our programs on a fan. So They're going to use a fan to walk through, and they'll cool them off, and at the same time they can read the program on both sides of the fan. So we're just constantly evolving and changing to meet the needs of our consumer, the clients, the people that are on our tours.
That's wonderful, and the fan idea is terrific because then people can bring that home and
That's right.
keep it as a memento.
It's a memento, and it's a reminder. Next year, come back on the 2nd and 3rd weekend of October.
It's true.
And I'm sure you get a lot of return traffic. Most
We do,
definitely.
and that's a thing that has happened. Usually at the beginning of the tours, I'll ask the people on the tour, how many of you been on our tours before? More than half have come before. And we have a good number of people that have come every year. And they remember who they've seen in the past, and they don't mind seeing them again, but that we have a following, and we're so excited about that.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. Now, one interesting question we were talking about earlier is, how does your group go about selecting the spirits that will be portrayed in the cemetery tours?
Well, that is interesting, in that it seems like they just rise off the top of the table.
It's true. It's true.
A good example for Koi Pavi, the way that came about in Opelousas, they started after the burning of the governor's mansion 3 years ago, an event to recognize women in history and the monies to help rebuild the old governor's mansion. Well, Koi Pavi was being highlighted, and I was like, oh, we got to have that story. And said, Donnie, you want to do that? I want to do that one. The other person that was there also was a person that we're going to be, Gradnigo, that's going to be in our cemetery tours this year. She was being portrayed, so the person that was dressed up like Ms. Gradnigo said she would be glad to come and do it. Then, give you an example, the lady from the Gradnigo, Marie Marcel, who's actually playing the part of the Ms. Gradnigo, she says, well, I know somebody that's important. She says, the person that made the crosses for the cemetery, and he has a relative here in Opelousas. Maybe he'd do it. So he's going to play out his relative. And then it just kind of like just pivots, and it just keeps moving around. And so that's how the spirits rise off the top of the table. People say, I know someone that was buried there, or I know someone that used to be in Opelousas, and they were friends with this person. How about it we do that particular person? And then we start the research. And the research comes from history of newspaper clippings. History comes from the family telling the stories of the past. So we get a lot of rich history from people passing that legacy on through the years.
I can certainly, and I'm sure that everyone who's watching is just counting the days until they can go. We're just about out of time, but once more, can you give us the dates, Yvonne?
October the 13th, 14th, 20th, and 21st. Saturday evenings is at 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, and 8. And on Sundays at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock is a handicap accessible tour.
Wonderful. A time perfect for everybody.
Okay.
Ladies, thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
with us. We really appreciate
you.
it. And
Enjoyed it.
we will see you in the cemetery.
Amen.
Not too
Thank
long.
you.
And thank you for joining us for today's edition of Catholics Today. I'm Blue Rolfes. We'll see you next time.